Hello everyone! Today I'll be going over the components of a successful offensive hazard stack team, giving examples of common Pokemon that fill each role, and I'll show an example team at the end. I first did a guide on bulky hazard stack about a year ago, and the link to that is in the description. Today we're focusing on offensive hazard stack of two archetypes, offense and hyper offense. Before we get into hazard stack specifically, it's important to understand these archetypes in general. Despite offense and hyper offense being next to each other on the archetype spectrum, they actually function quite differently. The main difference is that sacking Pokemon, which means letting a Pokemon die, is a part of the game plan for hyper offensive teams. Offense teams definitely do sack Pokemon, as does any archetype, but it's not part of the plan. Take Hisuian Samurott, for example, which is very popular on both Hazard Stack Offense and Hazard Stack Hyper Offense since it can set spikes with Ceaseless Edge. It will often run very different sets depending on whether it's on offense or hyper offense. Offense may use Assault Vest or Heavy Duty Boots, items which have defensive utility because the intention is that the Samurott will enter the field many times. A hyper offense team is more likely to use a Focus Sash on Hisuian Samurott, and just click Ceaseless Edge until it dies. The plan is to let it die. Hyper offense teams will have no defensive core, and often a lot of setup. Offense teams will have a small and temporary defensive core, but they are designed to make switches, not just sack Pokemon when any pressure is put on the team. Now that that's understood, let's talk about Hazard Stack. The first misconception we need to get out of the way is that Hazard Stack is about stacking all hazards. It's not. In this context, and what most people mean when they say Hazard Stack, they're talking about Stealth Rock and Spikes. Toxic Spikes, which poison grounded Pokemon on entry, aren't very good in the SVOU metagame since there are lots of great poison types that just absorb them, and even teams without a poison type can just Terra Poison something. Sticky Web, which lowers the speed of grounded Pokemon on entry, although a fantastic hazard, has few viable setters, and Sticky Web teams look drastically different than teams that try to set Stealth Rock and Spikes. So, when I say Hazard Stack for the rest of this video, I'm talking just about Stealth Rock and Spikes. Stealth Rock can only be used once until it's removed, and it deals 12.5% on entry to Pokemon that are neutral against Rock. Pokemon that are resistant take only 6.25%, Pokemon that are weak to rocks take 25%, and this doubling trend continues with dual types. Stealth Rock affects flying and grounded Pokemon. Spikes only affect grounded Pokemon, but you can set 3 layers. The first spike will do 12.5% like Stealth Rock, the second spike will add only 4.2% damage, bringing the total to 16.7% on entry, but the third spike adds a significant 8.3%, bringing the total to 25% on entry. So the second spike kind of sucks. If you're in a spot where you can attack or set up the second spike, you probably want to attack. If you can attack or set up the third spike, you almost always want to get up that third spike. Scarlet and Violet OU is a fantastic environment for Hazard Stack. We have incredible spike setters like Hisuian Samurott, which is the only Pokemon ever that can set spikes with an attack, and a strong one too. We also have Ting-Lu, one of the bulkiest Pokemon ever, which gets both Stealth Rock and Spikes. And then we have Gholdengo, which can block both Defog and Rapid Spin, the most common forms of hazard removal. For those that don't know, Rapid Spin is a weak normal type move that removes hazards on the user's side and boosts speed by 1 stage. Defog removes hazards on both sides and has the mostly useless side effect of decreasing the opponent's evasion, but it's blocked by Gholdengo's Good as Gold ability, and no relevant defoggers can deal significant damage to Gholdengo and threaten it. All of this has led to the perfect storm for hazards to take hold. But after seeing this video, you'll be on the side setting the hazards, not the side getting wrecked by them. Let's go over what a good offensive hazard stack team looks like, starting with Stealth Rock setters. Glimmora has been a classic choice since the start of the generation, with its incredible ability that sets toxic spikes when hit with a physical attack. There are a lot of viable poison types in OU, so Glimmora has fallen out of favor somewhat, but it's still a great choice. Red card defensive sets and Focus Sash are the most popular, but Meteor Beam sets have had some success as well. Glimmora is generally more popular on Hyper Offense, but some offense teams can use Glimmora as well. Landorus provides a lot of defensive utility for Hazard Stack teams in one slot. An Electric immunity, a Ground immunity, Intimidate to help with physical threats, and of course Stealth Rock. Some run soft sand sets on Landorus, but Rocky Helmet is the most popular. Great Tusk is mostly popular because it can set Stealth Rock and remove them. Booster Speed is a great option since it can tank hits from Gholdengo and outspeed Dragapult, making it usually the most effective set for both removing and setting Stealth Rock, but of course, being a Great Tusk, there are lots of options. Ting-Lu is right up there with Landorus for most popular. It's one of the best. It can do Stealth Rock, Spikes, or both. Incredible defenses allow it to consistently get up hazards unless you see a Hatterene. It has more bulk than any popular hazard setter by far, and it can also function as an answer to threats like Raging Bolt and Iron Moth. Teams that rely on Ting-Lu defensively don't want to run a dual hazard set though, as Ting-Lu will be chipped to very low health by the time it can set Stealth Rock and several layers of spikes. Ting-Lu is also very easy to defog and rapid spin on, so you'll often see it paired with Gholdengo or other very solid spin blockers like Sinistra. Tinkaton is a bit of a niche option on offensive hazard stack, but it works quite well. It's great against Darkrai, and the utility offered by options like Thunder Wave, Encore, and Knockoff is significant. It can run Air Balloon Pickpocket to steal an item, or for teams that really want to get hazards up, it can use Mold Breaker, which allows it to bypass Hatterene's Magic Bounce and set Stealth Rock. Treads, like Tusk, is a nice 2-in-1 removal and hazards Pokemon. Steel Beam Treads is more popular on Hyper Offense, since that set really only intends to enter the field once before being sacked, but other sets like Air Balloon work well on offense. Garchomp, like Ting-Lu, can run both hazards, which is really nice roll compression. It's also an amazing contact punisher with Helmet and Rough Skin, which can be a big deal against some sweepers. Ting-Lu is much more popular for the role of double hazard setter, but if your team needs a physical wall more than a special wall, or if you need a fire resist, Garchomp might be the move. Deoxys can be used with Stealth Rock plus 3 attacks on Hyper Offense, or you can also run a dual hazard lead with this as well. Unfortunately, the meta has not been kind to Deoxys speed. It loses badly to leads like Tinkaton, Hisuian Samurott, Iron Treads, and more. Still, Sash sets can do the dual hazard, which is pretty nice. Despite its poor position in the metagame, it's still the right choice for some teams, but I would caution against using this if you think it's your first choice. Now, I want to warn you that these are not the only options. These are just some common options. Leads like Sandy Shocks, Explosion Garganacl, and even Sudowoodo have seen high ladder success as Stealth Rock setters on Hazard Stack teams. The point of this video is to explain what offensive Hazard Stack looks like, what the main components are, and to go over the current meta for what options are considered the best. But often, the best teams are a little bit creative and use something unexpected. Now, with that in mind, let's go over the best spike setters. Samurott is the most popular spike setter for offensive hazard stack, and for good reason. It sets spikes with a powerful attack, bypasses Magic Bounce, and has priority in the form of Sucker Punch and Aqua Jet. It has Sacred Sword if it wants to hit other Samurott, and it has a good matchup into almost every other lead. It can run Choice Scarf, Heavy Duty Boots, Assault Vest, and Focus Sash very well, and some even run Swords Dance Black Glasses set. It's a great Pokemon and should be heavily considered on every offensive hazard stack team. Once again, here's Ting-Lu. I won't repeat myself since I just talked about it, but it can set spikes as well. Just remember, if you're counting on getting up 3 layers, try not to rely on Ting-Lu too much for defensive utility, as it will probably be quite chipped after it gets up all 3. Wellspring isn't nearly as popular as the other two, but it does offer a strong knockoff user, a water immunity, ground resist, and spikes all in one slot. It's often not bulky enough to get up 3 layers in most games, but it can almost always get up 1. You can also drop one of these attacks for Encore for more utility. And just like Ting-Lu, Garchomp is a spike setter as well. I wanted to mention Glimmora because it can set both hazards, but it's not very good at doing so. Thanks to how many weaknesses Glimmora has paired with its mediocre speed, typically it can only get up Stealth Rock before it goes down. Setting up multiple layers of spikes is a major challenge for Glimmora. Less than a quarter of Glimmora currently runs spikes, but it is an option that can work for some teams if you don't really need hazards up. And once again, here's Deoxys Speed. As I said, not a great option on a lot of teams, but it can work. Now, you may wonder, why was Gliscor not mentioned as a Spike or Stealth Rock setter? The reason is that, on offensive teams, Gliscor is typically outclassed by Landorus, at least as a hazard setter. Landorus has superior attack and the ability Intimidate, which is better in shorter games, which offensive hazard stack generally creates. In longer games, Poison Heal usually provides more value, which is why Gliscor is a better choice on bulky hazard stack teams. There are a lot of good hazard setters in this video that I won't mention. I didn't forget them, they just don't fit on offensive teams. And remember, what I just went over are not the only spike setters. Meowscarada, other forms of Ogerpon, and tons of low tiers could have potential as spike setters as well. Alright, now you have Stealth Rock and spikes. The next most important thing is keeping those hazards up. Bulky hazard stack teams can reset hazards many times in a game, so although it's not ideal for hazards to be removed, it's not the end of the world. For offensive hazard stack, it often is the end of the world if hazards are removed. Resetting hazards is typically a difficult or impossible task, so offensive hazard stack teams really just want to keep hazards up the whole game. The most common form of removal is Rapid Spin, so any good offensive hazard stack team must have a Ghost type, and not just something that can Terra Ghost, you need a real Ghost type. This role is aptly called the Spinblocker. There's only one Pokemon though that can block Defog and Rapid Spin. It's Gholdengo. Gholdengo is a very popular option on many hazard stack teams, but offensive hazard stack in particular likes to run Gholdengo, since these teams are typically quite weak to defog. Air Balloon sets are the most common option, since it allows Gholdengo to switch in safely at least once to Great Tusk, but there are so many more sets. Shuckaberry, Choice Scarf, Salakberry, Custapberry, Metal Coat, Covert Cloak. If you can think it, Gholdengo can do it. Dragapult is the second most popular spin blocker for offensive hazard stack. It doesn't have Gholdengo's ability to stop defog, but it makes up for that with incredible speed and decent breaking power, especially if you go with a mixed set with Dragon Darts. Dragapult also matches up very well into Zamazenta, which is an extremely high usage Pokemon that is typically a nightmare for offensive teams. Pecharunt can use Nasty Plot or Heavy Duty Boots pivoting set. The former is more common on hyper offense and the latter on offense. Pecharunt can't stop defog like Gholdengo, but many consider it a better spin blocker as it can outspeed Great Tusk. Pecharunt can also beat Zamazenta without needing to Terra, and it switches into Ogerpon Wellspring, a feat that single-handedly elevated it to OU status. Gholdengo, Dragapult, and Pecharunt are by far the most popular options for offensive hazard stack, but Sinistra can work as well. It's generally considered better on bulky hazard stack, but some hyper offense teams can appreciate that it functions both as a spin blocker and sweeper. Alright, now you have a Stealth Rock setter, Spike setter, and a spin blocker. You're all set now, right? And you can put whatever you want in the last 3 slots? Well, not quite. There's one more team requirement that you must fulfill. a knockoff user. Heavy-duty boots are everywhere, typically on the Pokemon most weak to hazards. Without a knockoff user to remove all those boots, your hazards won't do much at all. You need at least one knockoff user, although 2 or 3 is often better. 4 or more is usually not a great idea though. Knockoff is 97.5 base power when removing an item, but only 65 base power if the opponent's item is already removed. If you have knockoff on too many Pokemon, you'll start to experience diminishing returns. 2 or 3 is the sweet spot for most teams, but there are exceptions. A good knockoff user needs to threaten common knockoff absorbers, which are Pokemon that don't mind their item being removed. The big 3 are Gliscor, Corviknight, and Clefable. If your only knockoff user is a Great Tusk, with, say, Rapid Spin, Ice Spinner knockoff, and Headlong Rush, you'll be out of luck if you see a Clefable or Corviknight. Sure, you'll knock off their items, but you won't get anything else. A good knockoff user can threaten these knockoff absorbers, and thus force in a Pokemon that doesn't like its item getting knocked off. A great example is Darkrai. Darkrai threatens Corviknight with Dark Pulse, Clefable with Sludge Bomb, and Gliscor with Ice Beam or just boosted Dark Pulses. Since none of these knockoff absorbers can switch in, Darkrai can get a knockoff on something else, probably a special wall, and most special walls really hate taking a knockoff. Think Blissey, Clodsire, Tinglu, Primarina, and Toxapex, for example. Your opponent's team is ready to sacrifice an item on a physical wall, but probably not a special wall. Darkrai also provides a valuable speed to offensive hazard stack teams, and it's a great revenge killer. Next up is Samurott. We've already discussed it, so I won't go into it too much, but it can use knockoff as well. It's not a great knockoff user since it normally needs to use its turns to set spikes, but it can get one off sometimes before it goes down. Wellspring is an incredible knockoff user that is completely unwallable with hazard support. Even answers like Sinistcha, Amoonguss, Vileplume are not going to have a fun time if you manage to knock off their boots and get hazards up. Nothing can stop it, not even full stall. The problem is that Ogerpon hates hazards itself, so if you're using it on offensive hazard stack, you'll probably want removal from a Rapid Spinner. Gliscor is great on offense, hyper offense, and even bulky hazard stack teams. All of them like to use Swords Dance Gliscor. It's more common on bulky hazard stack, but it works on all. Some hyper offense teams even use Double Dance Gliscor with Swords Dance and Agility. Iron Valiant has Swords Dance and mixed sets that run knockoff very well. It's a great sweeper, and especially in the stall matchup, Swords Dance Iron Valiant can often force Dondozo to take a knockoff, leaving it vulnerable to the next physical sweeper. This strategy of stacking multiple physical setup sweepers with knockoff is very good on offensive hazard stack, and it can also just run sets like this. Utility Mixed Encore is very good as well, and can usually get 1 or 2 knockoffs in a game. Scizor has been gaining popularity thanks to its reliable and strong bullet punch priority. It's great for knocking off birds like Moltres, Zapdos, and Corviknight, and it also provides great defensive utility with its resistance to Ice and Fairy. It's walled by Corviknight though, so Scizor is often paired with Gholdengo to block Corviknight from getting an easy defog. Great Tusk offers roll compression with both Rapid Spin and Knockoff, but it's not a great knockoff Pokemon, as I said. It should be noted that some Pokemon that are strong knockoff users on bulky hazard stack aren't quite so good on offensive hazard stack. Take Meowscarada for example, which you may have noticed I didn't mention. Over a long game, it can slowly chip down Corviknight with U-turn and Stealth Rock damage. If paired with Hazards and Gholdengo, eventually Corviknight will be in range to be two-shot by Meowscarada's Triple Axle. Meowscarada is great on bulky hazard stack teams, and it's almost completely unwallable long-term. On offensive hazard stack, though, you just don't have that kind of time. Meowscarada can't enter the field 10 times to slowly chip down Corviknight. the game just won't go on that long. So be aware when you select knockoff users for your offensive hazard stack team. They not only need to pressure common knockoff absorbers, they need to do so immediately. So, now you have a stealth rocker, a spike setter, a spin blocker, and a knockoff user or two. You're officially done with all the requirements of a good offensive hazard stack team, but there's still more to go over. There are a lot of Pokemon that don't fit into any of the previous categories, but are still very good on hazard stack, just as abusers. Before I go over these though, if you're getting something out of this, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and like the video. The first common abuser on hazard stack is Dragonite. All of its sets really appreciate the chip done by hazards. It gets a lot of kills with just one Dragon Dance if full hazards are up, particularly with its Terra normal extreme speeds. But you could say this about tons of Pokemon. Almost everything likes hazards being up and gets a lot of kills with hazards up. The real benefit to Dragonite is the defensive utility. The fact that it can live any hit and fire back with an Earthquake and then an extreme speed makes it a consistent choice on a lot of offensive teams, and hazard stack is no exception. Most Dragonite sets really struggle with Corviknight though, so you'll probably want to Gholdengo unless your Dragonite is Fire Punch Terra Fire. Like Dragonite with extreme speed, Kingambit gets a lot of kills with Sucker Punch thanks to hazards. It's a solid sweeper and has a lot of defensive utility, like resisting Ghost and Ice. It is very weak to Great Tusk though, which is of course the most common Rapid Spin user, so most Kingambit on hazard stack will be Terra Ghost to avoid becoming Rapid Spin fodder. Continuing the priority train, we have Raging Bolt. For the same reason Dragonite and Kingambit are good, it gets a lot of kills with Thunderclap that it otherwise wouldn't. Heavy-duty boot sets are actually pretty solid as well on more offensive teams, and less so on hyper-offense, but Booster Energy is good on offense and hyper-offense. Like Kingambit as well, it is weak to Great Tusk though, so usually you'll want to run Terra Ghost on these to avoid becoming Rapid Spin fodder. Zamazenta is just a great Pokemon. Heavy-duty boots, all-out attackers, put up a ton of pressure when hazards are up, especially if teammates have knocked off some defensive walls, and Iron Defense sets with Roar can start racking up hazard chip as well, all while providing an incredible physical wall that can deal with Wellspring, Kingambit, and some Dragonite. A lot of Pokemon that are a nuisance to Darkrai, like Tinglu, Kingambit, and Assault Vest Primarina, are heavily chipped by hazards. Darkrai also doesn't mind running heavy-duty boots, as there's no item it strongly desires to run. Even without knockoff, Darkrai is a great choice. Latios is amazing against hazards set by your opponent, since it only takes 12.5% from Stealth Rock and is immune to all others. And, much like Darkrai, it loves Tinglu and Kingambit getting chipped. Scarf is good on offense, and Calm Mind is good on offense and hyper offense. Iron Valiant, even if it's not knockoff, is a very solid and popular hazard abuser. Nothing special about it, just a good sweeper that likes hazard chip as much as everything else. Iron Moth may seem like an odd choice, given it's very weak to hazards itself, but it absorbs toxic spikes, which is great for teams with lots of grounded Pokemon, and it's also a solid fairy resist. It loves the opponents getting chipped by hazards, but since it's so weak to hazards itself, you'll probably want a Rapid Spinner on the team. Iron Crown is good against hazards, and loves Tinglu and Kingambit getting chipped by them. It's fallen out of favor as a sweeper recently, and it's not incredible by any means, but it fits well on some teams and remains one of the best answers for Kyurem in the tier. Well, those are all the popular abusers that didn't fit into any other categories. There's one last topic I want to review though: removal. Removal is optional on most offensive hazard stack teams. Most hazard stack offense teams will run a lot of heavy-duty boots, or just have Pokemon that are naturally good against hazards and don't mind if Stealth Rock or Spikes go up. Pokemon like Zamazenta, Iron Valiant, Landorus, and Latios. As you're setting hazards, your opponent may be as well, so all hazard stack teams want to be good against hazards themselves. Hyper Offense hazard stack will typically just accept the hazard damage. After all, most Hyper Offense teams don't switch around much, so it'll probably be damage that they'll only have to take once on each Pokemon. Still, some offensive hazard stack teams really do want removal. Hazard abusers like Ogerpon Wellspring, Scizor, Raging Bolt, and Iron Moth really hate hazards. Defog or Tidy Up won't work, of course, since you don't want to remove your own hazards as well, and Court Change is even worse, so if you want removal on offensive hazard stack, your only real option is Rapid Spin. Great Tusk and Iron Treads are the most popular options for Rapid Spin, and this is justified. They provide solid defensive utility and handle most spin blockers reasonably well. There are a lot of sets these two can run, but if you really want to make sure the Rapid Spin successfully comes off, my personal favorite sets are Booster Speed Tusk and Air Balloon Iron Treads. Glimmora is not real removal, but I wanted to mention it because people would be telling me I forgot it in the comments section. It is incredibly easy to block Glimmora's Mortal Spin. Many steals can do it without a problem. Glimmora is also almost always dead, or nearly dead, just a couple turns into a game, so it's probably not going to be healthy enough to enter and Mortal Spin. I'm not saying you shouldn't use Mortal Spin, it's a good move, but you should not rely on it for removal. If you have a team with, say, Raging Bolt, Iron Moth, and Wellspring, and you're counting on a Glimmora to keep hazards off the field, you're going to have a bad time. I also wanted to mention Excadrill. Most sand is sand hazard stack, and Excadrill is actually great removal. Its typing, speed, and access to Swords Dance makes it incredibly consistent at getting hazards off the field at least once. The problem is that it needs sand to double its speed and make it worth using, so it can't fit on most hazard stack teams. Now let's take a look at an example team I made, the same team you've seen as background footage in this video. This team has performed well quite consistently for me on the ladder. My Stealth Rock setter is a Landorus. Smackdown is important here because it allows my Landorus to set Stealth Rock on Corviknight. Since I don't have a Gholdengo, it's very important, otherwise Corviknight could just defog on Landorus forever. As a Spike setter and my first knockoff user, I have Hisuian Samurott, a little bit on the bulkier side and equipped with an Assault Vest since my team doesn't really have any special wall. I also went with Terra Ground to shore up my Raging Bolt weakness. This has come in clutch late game before. Pecharunt is my spin blocker, and I went with a Parting Shot set here. Because my team is offense, not hyper offense, it appreciates this pivoting, and it enables setup on the next 3 Pokemon. Scizor is my second knockoff user, and you'll notice it has Terra Blast Electric. This helps with the team's Zapdos weakness, while also allowing Scizor to destroy Corviknight. Remember, it's very important for knockoff users to beat common knockoff absorbers. Then, as a hazard abuser, something that doesn't fit into any of the other categories, I have Latios. I'm running a fairly standard Soul Dew set with Psychic Noise. This helps break a lot of fat teams. Lots of offensive teams have a bad stall matchup, so make sure you don't forget about this when you build. Lastly, I have Zamazenta. This gives me fantastic immediate speed, a reliable answer to Kingambit, and a nice late game sweeper. This team is fairly standard despite having a few odd sets, but remember there are lots of ways to make a good offensive hazard stack team. Hydreigon and Reuniclus have both hit rank 3 on ladder when used on offensive hazard stack teams, and neither Pokemon is standard at all, so stay creative. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments. I try to reply to every comment I get. Also, if you learned something, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more educational, competitive Pokemon content. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.